Hello, good morning. It's coming up to 9:30 AM on Friday the 15th of January, and we're currently in the second week of lockdown 3 in the UK. I'm just out for my daily exercise. I'm staying within the BA boundary. I'll talk more about that shortly, and some of the precautions I'm taking as well. I've just left my home in Oldfield Park, Bath, ridden through the town centre, across the River Avon at Cleveland Bridge, and I rode down the A4, that's the old Bath to London road. I've just turned off in Bath Eastern High Street, and I'm going to turn left shortly. I've just wheeled the bike up this footpath. You see this road behind me, that's the main road off Bath Eastern High Street. It's a very short, sharp incline. If you get a car behind you, it's not very nice. This is the road heading up to the village of North End, but I'm going to be taking this road behind me. It's called Salisbury Lane. As I said, this is part of my daily exercise. We're allowed out once a day for exercise or crucial shopping. Today's ride is 15 miles and it's all around the boundary of Bath. So a little bit about my precautions. I've been wearing this neck ruff for the duration of the lockdown ever since last March. Whenever I pass people or I feel a little bit vulnerable or possibly a risk to other people, I just pull it up. So I do take social contact very, very seriously, not really mixing with anybody at the moment. I'm also staying within the BA postcode boundary. I used to be a postman, so I'm probably a little bit of a postcode geek. I think most postmen do have that sort of postcode spatial awareness. If you imagine Bath as the city, which is roughly circular, and right through the middle of it horizontally flows the River Avon. North of the River Avon is BA1, south is BA2. I live in BA2. I've just travelled from BA23 through BA24, across the River Avon at Cleveland Bridge, and on this ride I'll be passing BA3, 4, 5, 7, 8 and 9 before I drop back down over the Windsor Bridge, across the River Avon, back into BA23. Today's route, as you probably gathered from the title at the beginning, is called the Three Peaks. Bath itself is built in the crater or the caldera of an ancient volcano that's been extinct for dormant for many thousands of years. But the rim of Bath is actually surrounded by several hills, 7 I think, the same as Rome. So I'm going to be riding by 3 of them today. I find all 3 really interesting. I hope you do. Let's head up to the first one, Salisbury Hill. It's an old Iron Age hill fort, probably better known in popular culture because of the Peter Gabriel song, Salisbury Hill. You can probably tell by my breath, that's a very steep climb and you gain a lot of altitude very quickly. On this ride there's a couple of dog legs and this is the first one. So this is Salisbury Lane I've come up and I'll be carrying on this way. Salisbury Hill is just around there. Because of social distancing and unnecessary contact, I won't be going up there. I'll talk to you at the foot of it, but you'll see the ridge of it, the top of it, running long up there. Another back-breaking climb up to Little Salisbury. There's my bike just in the gateway. I'm not going to go all the way up today because you get a pretty good view of it from here. If I zoom in, you'll see it's a flat summit up there. As I said, Bath was an old volcano. In fact, it's the reason that Bath has the hot mineral springs because of previous volcanic activity. The hill itself is referred to as Little Salisbury, although it's more commonly known as Salisbury Hill. This is a fairly good aerial shot of it. It has an Iron Age hill fort up there and a trig point, and you can probably guess what's coming next. I fancy a wild camp up there sometime. In 1977 it was made pretty much world famous by the single by Peter Gabriel called Salisbury Hill. Now I've always liked the tune of that, but I think the lyrics are even better than the tune. My own opinion, and it's just my own interpretation, I think it's a song about feeling the need to move on and being a bit reluctant to share it at first with other people. Like all artistic content, it's open to interpretation, but I'll try and put a link in the screen above me now at the top right hand corner, and that'll give you a link to a copy of the single, and it's got the words with it as well. The words I think are really excellent. If I don't manage to put that link in the top, as usual, it'll be in the description below this video. I'm going to head back down that T-junction there and carry on up to my next destination, Charmy Down. It's now a farm, although in the Second World War it was the site of a night fighter airbase by the RAF originally, before they transferred to the neighbouring Culloden airfield. And then the United States Army Air Force moved in and used it until the end of the war, and then it's decommissioned in 1946. Again, links in the description below. I've climbed up from Salisbury Hill. The road has levelled out a little bit now. Some fantastic views of Bath down below me. It's fantastic up here. It really feels like a million miles from anywhere. Yet, about 3 or 4 miles from my house. It's just absolutely incredible what's on your own doorstep. Just before we get to Charmy Down, there's another dog leg similar to the last one, turning off to the right, and then it'll be up and back. Just another little precaution I'm taking, as well as the face mask and staying within my boundary and avoiding people. I'm actually using a chest mounted camera, so hence the big lump on the top of my chest. I just don't think it's right to stop and put a tripod up. To give you an idea of the geography, that's us looking back down on Bath. And this is the very busy A46 road. It's the Bath to Stroud road. It's really mostly used for traffic from Bath and the surroundings up to the M4, which is about another 7 or 8 miles up there. The original A4, there's parts of it left. In fact, I'm going to be riding on it shortly. It ran to the left, but this little bit was actually converged into the new road. In effect, they took out all the bends and the sharp turns to straighten it out, and then just around this corner I'll go underneath it eventually and join the old A46 for another few hundred yards before I then start heading back down towards Lansdowne along that lane over there. I'm now at the site of my second dogleg turn. So that's the road I've just ridden up, and it's starting to drop down. It's been running along the busy A46 there, you'll hear it. This is the continuation of that road. It's a dead end, but up there I'll talk to you at the bottom of Charmy Down Airfield. After I've spoken to you by Charmy Down Airfield, I'll then turn round and retrace back down this way, curl underneath the new A46. Right next to it is the old A46, and I'll turn right there a few hundred yards before then I turn off left down into Langridge and then up onto Lansdowne, the third of the hills. Before then, Charmy Down Airfield. I'll see you up there. I've got to as far as I can get without trespassing. There's Salisbury Hill up there. Again, you really need to park up and walk up to the top there. And it appears now to be the same as Charmy Down Airfield. That big ridge along there, I'm not prepared to trespass on people's private property. When I was a teenager, we used to come up here and do informal driving lessons up on the old airfield. I expect they probably do if there's different access. For today's purposes, I'll just show you some pictures that I grabbed off the internet. You can still see the control towers up there, and there's also a memorial, and I know it's permissible to walk around it, so you're probably going to have to take this footpath to get to it. I'll have to research that another day. While we're here anyway, just a little bit about the history and background of Charmy Down. It was opened as an RAF airfield in November 1940, and it's closely associated with a much bigger airfield, Culloden, which is several miles over that way. This satellite airfield provided night fighter defence for around the Bristol area, and it was served by Hawker Hurricanes. There's another couple of black and white images I've grabbed off the internet. You can see there with the semicircular big hangars up there, they were quite often turfed on the top to camouflage them from above. So it looks like it's a fairly substantial airfield. After the RAF transferred up to the much better equipped by then Cullen Airfield, the United States Army Air Force moved in and they used it as a flight training school and eventually a tactical base for their aircraft until October 1944. It's eventually decommissioned as an airfield in 1945 or 46. Once again, I'll drop all the links below in the description. Shame I can't get further up, but I will come up, I will revisit on another trip, but when I bring a backpack up. I'm just going to scoot back down there, cross underneath the new A46, join the old A46 for a bit, and then drop down through Langridge and then climb up to my third summit, which interestingly has got another World War II airfield connection to it. Just dropped down, crossed under the very busy new A46, and then I've just joined this remnants of the old A46. Hard to believe this used to be the main motorway road out of Bath up to the M4. So I'm almost about to join the new A46. You can see how busy it is. This is the little spur I came up, the old A46, and it would have carried on up there. That's just a dead end up there. We're going to head round this way down towards Langridge and Tadwick. Just a little anecdote that sprung to mind as I was coming up there. I first joined Bath Cycling Club in about 1985-86. They would have their club night in Oriel Village Hall, which was somewhere over there. It was demolished to make way for the new road. I remember one of the very first nights I went up there, there was a couple of teenagers who had just joined the club around about the same time as me, and we had rollers up there and we were just informally using the rollers, and one of these guys just went off sideways and his arm, his elbow fell 90 degrees onto a toe clip, and it literally went through his arm like almost like a Stanley knife. Luckily it was the forearm, the top, because I honestly think if it had been in the underarm it had probably sliced his arm off. It went very deep and you could see him trying to hold the blood back. And it was in the days before mobile phones, and we quickly were asking around who had a car, and luckily one person had a car. They'd driven up and they rushed him off to hospital and he was stitched up, and it actually wasn't a bad injury, but I honestly I cringe every time I think of that. Anyway, back to the present. Down here it's a very sharp drop down into the valley, and then there's a very sharp climb up towards Lansdowne. That's where we're heading off the left, and I think you'll agree with me, it's a pretty sharp drop down there, and then that's Lansdowne up along the top there. We're now about half a mile further on from that junction. You can still hear the A46 over to my left, but it's pretty shielded, the sound, with all the trees. Pretty spectacular, this lane. It looks like it's dropping down steeply to start with, and then it levels out. It's running along this ridge. There was a turning back there. That's the village of Woolly down there. We're going to carry on a bit further and then do a sharp left and come back, and I think it's that road running along there. Absolutely beautiful. I've reached the bottom of this valley. Here's my turning off to the left towards Langridge. That's going to be the start of the climb up to Lansdowne. If I was to carry on, that road would take me back up to the A46 just as it plateaus out at the top before it does a sharp right hand turn heading towards the M4. This way now. Last time I rode along here I think was New Year's Day about 5 or 6 years ago. I led a VC Walker club run on New Year's Day and it was like a river along here. Then we did a group shot at the top by Langridge Hall. So another little anecdote, flashback actually. This is back in the 1990s or early noughties. I used to be an All Dax UK organiser then. I used to run a few events from Bath. And another organiser, a guy called Peter Deutsch from over in the eastern side of the country, East Anglia I think, was organising a 600 km down from his area and turning here, and he asked me if I could arrange an overnight haul. And so he showed me the route, and he was bringing it all down here, and I thought, gosh, that's a little bit steep and treacherous. He was one of these guys that is sure and sure if there was a hill he would go out of his way to find it. Through my post office contacts I found out who rented out Langridgeville Hall at the very top of this next climb, and I hired that out and ran that as an overnight control. And I remember the riders coming in. The very first one was a very young Steve Abrahams, just how shattered they were, and I think he got a little bit of negative feedback from that particular route. He brought them in a bit less hilly the following year. That was a very pleasant memory running that control. It was really nice being on the giving back end rather than the participating end, but it was a bit of a wake-up call to just how tired and spaced out people are halfway through a 600. I remember thinking a lot of them just sounded really drunk, and I suddenly thought, hey, that was me last week up in mid-Wales, so it's a bit of an eye-opener. It really is a beautiful spot down in this hidden valley. You can see this lovely little stream here. Going to just go around the corner, then there's a very long and quite steep climb up to Lansdowne. Lovely sound of water running down off the fields into this drain. Wow, it's a beautiful place. I think this ride, planning it, riding it, filming it, sharing it with you, is a perfect example of what you can achieve even with the limitations of lockdown. The ride itself is probably barely going to be 15 miles, a shade over possibly, but it just feels like a real adventure because I haven't been around these roads for so many years, and it's triggering so many pleasant memories. I think in a few years it's going to trigger some painful memories as well, because it is quite a pull up to Lansdowne. I've always been a little bit puzzled by why certain rides and visiting locations from say years ago would trigger previous memories. And I've just signed up to do a beginner's course in neuroscience. It's called The Brain and Space, and one of the lessons is going to, I think, possibly explain that. The argument the professor's going to be making in one of the lectures is if you actually go off to do something, say, and you forget your keys or you forget what you're doing, quite often if you retrace back to your starting point, it will trigger a memory, and she's going to attempt to explain that. I'm looking forward to the whole course, but that lesson in particular, because I'm wondering if that will actually eventually explain why I get all these flashbacks sometimes, and I'm sure you do as well. Just suddenly memories just seem to just bubble up from nowhere. How's this for a beautiful church? St Mary's Magdalene. Part of the way up the climb. Look at that view behind me, over towards Lansdowne. And that's the summit just up there. Wow, looking back towards the A46 from here. Oh, I can see lorries just going along the top. Looking back where I came from, Salisbury Hill, may see the white lorry going along the A46 there in the far distance, then drop down to Tadwick, and this is Langridge Village Hall. This is where I ran that all-night control for a 600-kilometre Audax that came from East Anglia down to Bath and back. Just looking back at that haul, I got some great memories, especially those 2 years that we ran the all-night control for the 600. I remember the first year my girlfriend at the time, is now my wife, she finished work and we drove up to the co-op in Western Village, a few miles down the other side of the hill. And we picked up a lot of milk and fresh food, And then Pauline Porter from Bristol CTC, bless her heart, she had organised a lot of camp beds for us, and we spent about an hour inflating all those, and we tried to create a screen with blankets and paracord to blacken off part of the hall. First person to arrive, as you may imagine, would be a very young and fit Steve Abraham. I think he's about an hour in front of even the next person. And then they all started coming in during the night, and some of them had missed a turning back down in the valley and ended up in Bath and had to be redirected back up here. The following year, I think because of the complexity of the route getting here, he actually brought them along that road there, which is just as hilly. It's a bit more direct, but in my opinion a little bit more dangerous because of the traffic. Yeah, good memories. Another memory I have going back even further was when I was about 17 or 18. This would have been the late 70s. I used to roadie for a band, and they would come up here and practice on a Wednesday night. Just because it is so far from anywhere, there was nobody to annoy with the noise, and they were of the opinion that if you just turn everything up full, the audience won't be able to spot the mistakes. But I'll quite often be leaving here about 1 o'clock in the morning. My ears were absolutely ringing. From the hall then, I'm just about to join this main road. It's the Lansdowne to Wick Road, and you can see Bath Racecourse there. Next point of interest, I'll stop and talk to you a bit further along. It's just a few hundred yards on this road, round to the left, and then a sharp right hand turn. It's a bit safer to talk then. I've just ridden a few hundred yards along that road, turned down this road into Bath. Just past those cars there, it's going to drop steeply down into Bath. That's Lansdowne Lane. Came up here to watch the National Hill Climb Championship promoted by the RTTC. I think it's in 1982. Here you can get a much better idea of the racecourse. I've been up here a few times to watch races. I've never actually been inside. The stand is over there in the mist somewhere. Bath Racecourse behind me is the highest horse racing flat course in the UK at 780 feet, although Exeter and Hexham jump courses are actually higher. And there's been racing here since 1728 in one form or another. I didn't know that until I researched it during the week. Another thing I learned during the week when I was researching this film, which is why I like making them so much, I have to say, is I discovered the RAF requisitioned the racecourse in the Second World War. And it was an airfield. It was never concreted over. They just landed aircraft on the racecourse turf, and it was designated as RAF Northstoke. And I thought Northstoke's miles from here, but as a crow flies, it's not. It's just down the other side of this hill. So I found that fascinating. I knew about Charmy Down since I was a boy, and Cullen, I guess. But you sort of think the three hills leading this way, Cullen, Charmy Down, and Lansdowne, all three of them had RAF bases during the Second World War. I'm going to wait for a gap in the traffic, and then I'm going to head that way. I'm going to drop down over Lansdowne Lane into Weston, then over the river back to my side of Bath. That's me back in Bath now. I dropped down from the racecourse over the very steep Lansdowne Lane into the back of Weston Village, BA1 through BA1 crossed over the footbridge behind Lidl supermarket, across the River Avon, back into BA2, a few hundred yards from my house now. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope there's been a few things of interest in there. As I keep saying, the links will always be in the description below if you want further information. I realised from some of my previous videos I'm going to avoid saying, oh, the next video is going to be about this, because events is so uncertain at the moment. I've said a few things that I've just had to change. I was going to go to Southampton Travelodge, rebook that. I was going to go the second time, I've had to rebook it again. I've rebooked it for March. I may have to rebook that. I'm just simply unsure at the moment. I even entered a DIY Audax to to keep my randonneur around the year going, because I'd restarted in November, December. I was going to do January. That was the day before they introduced the third lockdown, so I've had to cancel that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this. Hope you found it interesting. Look out for each other, take care, and I'll see you soon.